Psychotechnologies
Technologies.
live.
Yeah. Welcome to the stream, Stuart.
Thank you.
Very special guest with us this episode. Stuart.
Mm.
Would you like to say some words about yourself, or we could just roll?
We could roll. I guess I could mention. Been chatting with you guys for a few months now, ongoing about meditation stuff, physical health stuff, and general wellness stuff. And so yeah, happy to talk with you guys. I live in Ottawa, so I'm not too far from you, Daniel. A little bit further from.
Yeah, I used to live there too.
You, Elliot.
Yeah, Ottawa is the capital of Canada for all those listening.
Mm-hmm.
It's
looking forward to winter being over at this point. I don't know how bad it is in Toronto, but we still have like
it's
3
not
feet
as bad as Ottawa.
Yeah.
Ottawa has like the coldest winters and so much snow.
Yeah, it just never ends, it seems like.
So this week we have a very special topic.
Right.
Would you like to introduce it?
Sure.
So I think this one's more your thing than mine.
Right. So it just so happens that I tend to talk to Stuart about like physical health and movement stuff. And I twinged my back yesterday morning. There was a plant pot, and it was like a big plant pot, but not too big, or not what I would have expected would have twinged my back. Also a couple of days ago I got like, I was sick. I had a sore throat, then I had a headache, and then now I have like a little bit of fluid in the lungs, sort of like sick. And so that's sort of in my system. And then I went to lift a plant pot and bam, twinged my back. So
did you do any kind of twisting while you were?
It was like I was like moving the plant pot, so like lifting it full off the ground and moving it. So
and twisting?
Maybe, I don't think I did a twist, but it's sort of like maybe I twisted. I don't know.
Okay.
There wasn't a clear twist.
What area of the back would you say you twinged?
Lower, like within the bottom 2 or 3 cervical connection.
Lumbar spine? Like, is it at the flat of your back, or below the curve, or at the bottom of the curve?
I feel like I should look this up on an anatomy diagram.
Relative to your
if you're looking things up, look up QL.
What's QL?
Quadratus lumborum.
QL muscle? What is QL muscle?
It's like the muscle that's right around your kidney.
Right. Okay. So I assume that I felt a twinge, which is a very specific feeling word, right? It feels a lot more like a nerve than a muscle thing, but obviously there's a muscle next to a nerve there. And then the muscle, if not supporting the nerve or squeezing the nerve, is having a really bad time. That's kind of like, yeah, it was a twinge. It didn't completely throw me out, but I was like, oh, this is bad. And then I still had to move the plant pot, so I did a little bit more, and I was like, oh yeah, I definitely shouldn't be doing too much of this. And then it was okay. And then I lied down yesterday afternoon to like try and settle my body, because obviously bodies don't like this sort of thing. And I went to get up after that, and it took me 10 minutes to get out of bed to like go to the bathroom, because I'd like go to get up, and then I'd tense something, I'd be like, nope, not like that, and then lie back down. Anyway, and then I had a bunch of people over for dinner last night, and I was like, I'm a madman, I'm gonna cook food. And so I did that too. And then when I move, it gets a bit better, but the like being really still, sort of the still to like starting movement is
right.
Which
that sounds like muscular. Doesn't that sound more muscular?
Well,
the whole...
so there's a couple other interesting things. One is that the pain point is like center of alignment. So when I am aligned vertically in the middle of my center of gravity, that's when it hurts, which is kind of funny and kind of interesting. What's interesting is that how often you hit that spot. Like, imagine if you're standing on one leg and you have your weight passing down through one leg, right? And now imagine trying to walk across the room. You'll be like, oh, I can just hop across the room or something. But actually, even to do that, you will like lean down, bend your knee a bit, put your weight to the center of your body, and then jump. And you'll do a lot of like, and so you can't, and so anytime I would go through the center of my gravity, I would hit the pain point, which is fascinating because all I want to do is stand straight, obviously, right? I just want to be like standing up. And so the body wants to naturally return there all the time. And in order to move, like, even if you're like, oh, I'll just crawl across the room, well, you need to transfer your weight from one leg to the other through the center of your your spine. So that was fascinating. Like I had like a little fabric back brace thing. I don't know where I put it now. And it was, oh, here it is. One of these little babies. So it sits on your back and wraps around your stomach and sort of transfers the weight around a little bit. But I had it like 3 meters away, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go get that. And then I was like, okay, how do I do that? And like, you know, I can move my hand like this, right? And not like change, tense my spine, use my arms only to pull me along. Like, or like use my legs without using, it was such a like I was having fun.
It's like crawling, like trying not to use your back at all.
Right. Which is, it's amazing how much you just use your back, right?
Yeah. Your back is very central to your body.
It's kind of, yeah, involved in everything.
Right.
Like your back, like those not muscles there is like almost like considered part of your core.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
You basically had to go into like swamp creature mode to get around.
Well, it's I would say, okay, so lumbar vertebrae, the ones at the bottom, probably L4, L5, which is the bottom two. If I had to guess, it's maybe it's L3, but it's sort of the bottom of the spine.
Are you planning on seeing a doctor about this?
Look, I haven't even done any pain relief. First of all. Second of all, it's the sort of ailment that a doctor will look at and say, you look like you're in pain. Would you like some pain relief for that? Like if it's not sticking out of the body, like a bone sticking out of the body, a doctor really can't do all that much. Like well,
that's what I'd be concerned about is like you have some kind of bulging disc or
nah, it's not that bad.
Okay.
But like a doctor will send you to a massage or a chiro, or, you know, if they even believe in chiros, or an osteo or whatever. I can just go to those if I actually want them. And so far I haven't taken any pain relief, so I've been like, it's not that bad, I guess. But actually, when I did that lying down meditating thing, I was like, so with no weight on it, I was like realigning my spine, and then I would hit the twinge and it would hurt, and then I would hit the eye of the storm and it wouldn't hurt, which was fascinating. Like there's a like, and then I got all this, you know, a lot of various spirituality paradigms use the central channel, this like invisible tube, imaginary tube, sort of like around the spine, to describe a pathway of energy to travel through that goes like, anyway, so I got the alignment, and then everything was like, yes, this is great. Like things flowed through it, and like things went all like dizzy, and I was like, oh wow, this is the spot to be in. But also that's so close to where the pain is, so I'm gonna have to just let the pain sort itself out, and then I'll come back and realign. Yeah.
Have you done this alignment thing before the injury, or is this injury kind of really high?
No, I had no idea that my spine was even out of alignment, and now I'm like, oh, I've had a spine out of alignment for most of my life. Now that I've done this, I'm like, oh, this is what alignment is, which would explain, you know, I've always had upwards rotation at the front of my hips, and that has been, I've been trying to stretch that out, talking to Stuart, like different leg movements, different this, different that, and like no idea why I couldn't seem to nudge that. And there was like, my body would occasionally get to the edge of things and say, nope, don't go there. And you got to trust the body. Otherwise you're like, occasionally question the boundaries, but trust the body. And then there's the like, I described it previously of like, if you can't put a limb somewhere, right? So if I go to put my arm back, at some point it says like, it's not painful to try and go further back. It just says like, nah, we can't. Right. And so with my hips, it's been like that it's just like try and turn your wrist backwards, right? and then try and keep going. Like your body just says, it doesn't say like, ow, it says no. Like it just says we can't. And so I've had a lot of like, oh, you can't, I just can't put my wrist back like this. I've had a lot of that around my hips and not really known what to do. But now I'm like, oh, I can feel like overnight I felt like muscles in my legs like changing which ones were contracted and like resetting something. It's been fascinating.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What was what spurred this on, this like realignment process?
I think the twinge freed up something, or yeah. So
Your
I wouldn't.
medical advice is hurt your back more.
Well, the thing I was lifting was not even heavy enough to do what I would have thought would have been twinging my back, which was confusing.
For what it's worth, every time I've I remember I was working on my aunt's property moving rocks, and the big boulders, zero problems, but a like medium-sized rock that weighed maybe like 20 or 30 pounds is what caused the problem. And part of it is because you underestimate. You're like with the heavy stuff, you're bracing really a lot. Like you're bringing in all this other supporting musculature. And with the light stuff, you don't take it as seriously, so it's easier to go too quickly or do it a little bit carelessly, I find.
Yeah, it's like when you're not paying attention, that's when it gets you.
Yeah, I mean, people throw out their backs sneezing, so don't think
sneezing is pretty intense though. That's like a full body.
It's true.
Well,
yeah. Like when I'm sick and I sneeze like that, oh, it almost always hurts the back of my neck.
Well, that's actually been an interesting thing. So now, previously, I'm gonna go for coughing, not sneezing, because I've been coughing. Usually when I cough, it's like a throat cough or a lungs cough. Now it's like the cough travels right down my spine to like the sore bit at the bottom of the spine. And when I cough, it hits that spot. Like it's like traveling through me in a new way, which is fascinating. I can't explain what's going on there, but there's something going on.
I'm imagining there's like a distribution of force and like because like when you're coughing, it's like your diaphragm and everything is kind of like squeezing, and so your body wants to distribute that force in a way.
Yeah, I don't really understand. Like I've got a little bit of like fluid in the lungs. Like I said, I'm sick, and so when I occasionally that builds up and I cough, instead of like really hitting the spot in the lungs, it travels right the way down and hits the lower spine. I'm like, oh, okay. There's something. I'm surprised because usually it doesn't. Usually my cough would be like a throat cough or like a mouth. It's up here when I do that. But then and like it moves, I can move it down a little bit because I'm trying to get something out of my lungs, but this one just spreads all the way down my body. Anyway, fascinating. But in general, I think despite the fact that it's a twinge and this is terrible and no one should have to twinge their back, I think this is a good thing. Like, I think that, like I said, it's an opening of the hips and a realigning of things. Like I'm very high spirits, despite the fact that I should be in a whole bunch of pain.
How bad is the pain right now? What'd you say?
Right now, it's probably about a 2 out of 10. But also, I do a lot of meditating, so my ability to like be present to pain, and then also my ability to like work through pain is like top notch. Like if I stop moving entirely and stop talking, then I just feel nothing. I don't feel any pain at all. But obviously, as soon as I move a bit or take a breath, there will be a little bit of pain that returns because it's obviously there's some ongoing discomfort. But yeah, I think the way I would describe it is that the problem with chronic pain is it keeps being there and people feel like they are permanently in pain. And I've done a lot of impermanence meditation such that it's not permanent, despite the fact that it does keep coming back every 3 seconds. Like, oh no, it's not here again. And then it is here and it's not here again. And so I'm like delighted every time it's not here again. And so I keep having this like happy experience that there's no pain. It's gone again. Like, and that's I guess a really powerful skill I have by accident almost.
Yeah, what I find is probably when you move, it creates a little bit of like you can smooth out the like constant pain, or like when you're just sitting there in a more static way. It's like with your meditative skills, you can kind of smooth it out. It's only when you move and there's like a discontinuity where it spikes in a different way until you can then become mindful of that and smooth that out.
Yeah, it's definitely so like I said, staying still. So it's once I stood up and was started cooking, you just keep moving through it and sort of move around. But sitting down or like staying still, like, and then going to stand up is like a bad time. Change is bad, staying still is bad. Like, it's all bad, but like it's worse if I stay still too long. I wonder if it's like a blood flow.
Well, it gets worse in the sense that like blood flow stops, and so everything starts stiffening up, I imagine. And then once you move again, you're like I find probably in the morning is the worst. Would you say, like, was this morning bad?
Well, I was optimistic that this morning would be better, and it was. I woke up this morning and I was like, this is better than yesterday. And I was very cautious, like the first time you get up. That's the possibility of having a really bad day, right? You just completely fuck it over, and but it went okay. There's another interesting thing with bladder. Like, if my bladder fills up, then it like obviously changes the weight in that area or something. And so I'm like, it feels like I have less bladder capacity than usual. I have to go pee more often because it's like it aggravates the spine or something, which is fascinating. That's like just like a tiny balance thing or something. But yeah, I woke up this morning and I was better. Not best, clearly. Wouldn't be lifting things, but yeah, optimistic for it keeps getting better. And also the legs and the hips start reorganizing. I've had this problem. So I went for a run a couple of days ago, and it has felt like I am forwards on my hips. Like it's like running like that on my legs, like sore in the legs joint to the hips at the front. And I've gone, oh, but there's nowhere to go. Like, it felt like I couldn't move back because back is also wrong, and forwards, I can't go any further forward. So I sort of stuck in this thing, went for a run. It's kind of interesting thinking about the sensations and thinking about pain and going nowhere forward, nowhere back, nowhere forward, nowhere back, nowhere forward, nowhere back. Like, something else has to change. And I suspect that may have contributed to, and so my back has decided to change the way it is to help this other system that had no leeway in it.
That's interesting. Are you going to try and do anything to like lock in those sort of like
the new position?
Yeah.
Probably not. Probably just like, I have the sense that more of a dynamic system is better than a locked-in system. And dynamic is obviously frustratingly confusing and like unknown and stuff. But I would rather that one with the freedom than not having the freedom and the stability that crunches me in, that like I don't have flexibility, I don't have freedom, I can't lift things well. Like I've been trying to get into lifting, and I have been told by people who watch me that I always round my back. And part of that has been the upwards at the front hip rotation, that you can't bend down and lift up without rounding if your hips are up like that, right? Anyway, so I'm hoping that I will now have the capacity to do those things. That'll be really exciting.
Yeah, what I meant is like teaching your nervous system that this new hip position is safe. Because maybe the reason it was locked in a certain position is because it was that, like, it considered it unsafe to be.
Yeah, so I have twinged my back more than once in the past as well. So I wonder if I did, and then I locked myself into the spinal position when I last twinged my back or something, or way early on, and then
Yeah.
it's taken this long to unlock it, sort of thing. But it's sort of like it's a constant thing, right? So if I go to stand, my body will be like, whoa, we're not sure if we can handle that, right? It's not really, it doesn't really come up emotionally. It's more like a physical, like a nervousness or something. I've said this before on the stream, but it's like there's three brains. There's the intellectual brain, there's the emotional brain, and then there's the physical brain that deals with the physical movement of the body. So if I go to stand up, I can imagine that the physical will start to overflow to the emotional, and I'll be, like I said, nervous. Be like, oh, I'm not like, if I'm like, okay, let me go stand up now. Like already, I'm like, the there's like an uncertainty, and then there's a cognitive bit that like, I'm not sure if I can do that, or I'm not sure if that's a good idea. And like, I could easily be like, I'm an adult, I've stood up 100 times thousands of times in my life, this will be fine. But that's like injury territory, right? So what I really want to do is go like, okay, I've got some uncertainty here, I'm going to like go slow with it. Like, where is my weight? Can I put my weight through things? Like I don't know. There's definitely a feeling like I don't know if I can stand right now, like safely without causing pain, sort of thing. And
Yeah, isn't this
so
sort of
like
sorry, keep going.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I know sometimes the emotional will like that will stay around even when the physical is healed. There's still that sort of like emotional
Right, there's like an echo
uncertainty.
sometimes. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. That's why you should deal with your shit, clean up all your cognitive, emotional, and physical, because it
I don't
can
know
still.
a ton about Alexander technique, but isn't that like isn't that part of what it is? Is like trying to like recondition the emotional mind to move freely and like kind of trust the physical mind
I don't know if it gives you a spaciousness and a like a reset. Alexander technique is very spiritual as well. It's very funny. There's a book, I read a book on Alexander technique, and it was like, it's clear we're doing spirituality, but you can't tell people that because they don't want to do it. So we're just going to tell people we're doing physical movement form and like retraining the body to move physically, and accidentally slip the spirituality in there. But yeah, that's sort of like some of what I have been doing over the last sort of since I did my back, has been Alexander type technique of like, they call it like relearning to use the body. So the classic thing is like a sciatic nerve. So you at one point you did the injury, and then you have this phenomena where you go to stand up and you squeeze the nerve with a muscle, and this happens every time. This is just your pattern of standing up, right? You put weight through the thing, it tightens up, and then like it hurts like hell, right? That's the pattern. And so you need to relearn the pattern. So it's very hard to tell an adult, okay, forget everything you know about standing up from a chair, right? But that's kind of the process. You sit in the chair, you forget everything you know, and now you relax, you sit, you get comfortable, you wait. And then when your body sort of like settles, you go, okay, now try and stand up. And immediately, what do? You like tense your lower back, and like as I grab the armrests, I'm like hurt, and I've already tensed up the lower back, right? So if one muscle there is pinching the nerve, immediately sciatica. I haven't even done anything. I haven't even stood up, and it's like, oh yeah, the way that I am going about standing up is too forceful, or it's tensing something that it shouldn't. I need to learn to stand up without tensing muscle. And that's sort of how Alexander works. So then you, if you need to, you work through it really slowly, and you take your time, and you start again, right? It may take 5 or 10 minutes to like reset, and then you go to like, okay, I'm gonna stand up, right, okay, I'm good. Oh wait, that was the twinge. I'm gonna like start again, relax, get present, and stand up until I can just move easily, which is why it takes some time and takes a bunch of patience, but it's great work, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who has spinal injuries or pain or sciatica or any of these fun ones.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been learning a lot of my problems are probably from overclenching as well.
Ah,
Just bringing in way too many
uh,
muscles
in the
than is
jaw
necessary.
or everywhere? Or
So jaw, neck, shoulders,
Hmm.
and abdominals, and probably some muscles in the back as well. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um,
Are you, is
so
that like an anger thing in all your muscles, or you're just like a safety thing? Like, I guess we sort of like curl in at the front when to protect ourselves, right?
yeah, so I've discovered there's a lot of different reasons. Part of it could be the safety thing. So like if you have pain, like let's say gut pain, you'll clench, you'll contract a bunch of muscles because that kind of like diminishes the pain at least temporarily.
Hmm.
Um,
Right. That's my
if
classic is
you're
like you stub your toe and then you clench your jaw to like dull the pain, and then
yeah,
you like keep walking and walk it off a bit, and then you
that's
like
part
have
of why you yeah, it's part of why you make the vocals in the first place is because like you're like oh is like
Mm,
you're tensing up.
right. I'm just like suddenly thinking of an invention of language model that included just involuntary vocalizations of people stubbing their toes going and then like building language based on those things, right? Just language that pops out of your mouth,
Those are called
obviously.
swear words.
Right, but like early language started with like grunts and noises until we got the same
Oh
grunts for the
yeah,
same phenomena, and then like that's how you build a
right.
language model.
Ah,
Wait,
okay.
so is this what the Alexander technique kind of does, where you're like both people get up and then you try to like mimic the things that would cause you to do those sounds naturally?
So Alexander technique can be used for speech stuff as well, where uh, obviously people have many like self-critical processes around speech or voice or singing, and so they are clenching their vocal cords when they are going to perform, and they need to get themselves to not do that. So it works on that as well, that you try and do a reset. So props in the Alexander technique therapy room are like a chair. Like you literally sit on the chair and then relax and maybe get some help getting to the relaxed place and then try and stand up. Or the floor, we just lie on the floor. I have a friend who she couldn't jump. She had something in her spine, and so she couldn't generate the force to move upwards in the air. And then she did some Alexander technique, and then she can now jump, that much. She's older. She's 60 or 70 or something like that. And she can jump that far off the ground. And she's so thrilled by the fact that she can jump off the ground.
That's just
But like if you think of what it takes to like raise a body off the ground, you need to put enough force into the ground that counters your entire body weight. So if you have a spinal problem, you can't put the force through the ground to lift yourself up. Anyway, so now she can jump a little bit. She's very happy. This was many years ago. She did her Alexander technique stuff, but she swears by it, absolutely. But
Should
yeah,
be doing dunk contest next year.
no, she never got that far, but she's very happy with what she can do, that she can't even get off the ground.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm finding this topic of like doing, like someone does a thing and they make like these like weird random grunts or whatever, and then you have to mimic it, but
Mm,
not through like a voice mimicking, but through like natural body
like an
movement.
emotional mimic, sort of.
Yeah, it's like if somebody's like picking it up and they're like, ugh, and like,
This is
okay,
like
now
an improv exercise game.
yeah, now do that, but don't copy the noise, but copy the noise. Like do the thing that's going to copy the noise.
Mm.
And
I've
like
done
that as a psychotechnology.
I've done improv in like a circle of people where someone will like make a noise or sound like and then the next person will take that and like slightly exaggerate what they thought the point was, and so the next one will be like and then the next one will be like like that each one only exaggerates from the previous one, and so you can get a change of noise and phenomena, and like going around a circle, like traveling through the noise. It's sort of like a nice stretch.
Yeah.
A lot of improv is like stretch the muscle of various emotional systems that we don't usually lead into.
Yeah, that's an interesting one as well. I feel like there's like a couple different things that you can do within this space. It's interesting because like circling is also that will happen randomly, I find. Where like someone will like have like a certain tension, and then you do like a breathe out, and then they'll do like a breathe out. But like, because that's not what you're supposed to do, or like that's not like that wasn't named beforehand, it can get like weird. Because you're kind of like vibing, like you're vibing in like this way that's non-verbal, but like non-words but verbal. Sorry, or like I don't even know how to like describe that. It's like guttural or more like visceral noises.
Mm.
Mhm.
Right.
You guys find any benefits from doing this?
It's like a different language it winds up being.
Mhm.
And so you wind up being in a different mode of reality. Like for me, I actually do this all the time now because my kid doesn't talk and he doesn't really make noise that could be confused with language so much. And so there's a lot of like, yeah, like trying to relate on this deep, I don't know, like I say it's deeper because it's like a more embodied, like
More primitive, sort of. But,
yeah, more primitive. It's much more primitive.
Less abstracted.
Yeah. And it's actually like hard because I didn't realize like so much communication revolves around external, like something external. And to not have like to use that as a point of reference, and to not have that external reference to be able to relate to is, yeah, I don't know. It's like kind of, I don't know, like weird and cringy a little bit, but I think like all these techniques kind of are until they're not.
I mean, doing it with a baby doesn't seem that cringy. It's probably, it would feel a little cringier doing it with a bunch of adults in a room, but
Yeah.
I guess there's some benefits to, I guess, getting over that cringe.
Yeah.
Kind of forces you to not take yourself quite so seriously, I guess.
Yeah. And it, like I think with the adults like they can normalize it. And then with me, I'm like, well, I guess like he doesn't know what's going on, right? And he's just like, oh, like we're relating. And I'm like, should I be teaching him to relate this way? Like, I don't know. I haven't thought this out. I haven't practiced this. It doesn't come from a long tradition. It comes from me like screwing around.
Probably better
right
than
now.
baby talk. Do you do baby talk with him?
I do. He does like the high pitch to make him laugh. But I don't do it that much. My wife does.
I think I read, I'm not a parental expert or anything. I think I did read, you don't want to do too much baby talk. Like you want to almost talk to them like they're an adult so that they start picking up.
Yeah, my hunch is the more you treat them like an adult, the more they act into that way of being. Yeah.
Yeah. That's my understanding as well. But I think that probably does count more like host language. Not like
even like
which is all nonsense, right?
Even like, look at the trees, aren't they pretty? And like, look, it's a bird, and like, isn't that nice? Those sorts of things. You're still adult language, and that can be really useful to give the kid a knowledge about the world. This is a tree. This is a book. Let's read the book.
Yeah, I mean, my wife does that. I do. I like to do a lot of the improv where we like play together and just make up stories and things
So
like
you do a
that.
tax return.
Yeah, my wife is more into like she reads them like books and what's the pictures and these are what this is called. My mom likes to do ABCs because you're like, oh, he'll get used to it, and like when he goes to school, he'll already know his ABCs.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
actually highly recommend that. My grandma taught me basic arithmetic and spelling and stuff, and it gave me like a huge leg up starting early school. And then when you start with a leg up, you get all this positive reinforcement because you do well on your homework or on your schoolwork. And so the teachers will give you a little bit more attention and a little bit more positive reinforcement, and it just snowballs. So any like small advantage snowballs for sure.
Nice. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna do that, but yeah, but it's just like just where he's at now. I think it's a lot of that stuff is too early. But yeah,
How old is he?
he's 5 months, 5.5 months.
So he'll be a doctor, right?
Huh?
So he'll be a doctor. You can tell at 5 months, right?
He'll be a time. I mean, he's got like an athlete
Surgeon General.
body at this point.
You're gonna get him to do like baby reps of like lifts.
I don't get him to. He just does it on his own. Like if he doesn't, if he's not exercising like every waking moment, he gets upset. It's like he's like a gym rat. Like just that, and he's like way ahead on his like metrics, like where he's supposed to be. It's like a full month ahead.
How tall are you, Daniel?
I'm almost 6 feet.
Is your wife tall? Or
My wife is not that tall. No. She's like normal girl height. I don't think he's gonna be a basketball player, which is disappointing unless we like feed him some HGH, but I don't think I'm allowed to do that.
yeah, get him on the China program. Whatever.
But
they're
what's that?
giving
Do
their-
they-
I don't know. I just assume they have some kind of stuff for their super athletes there.
Okay, so Yao Ming, who's like this, I don't know, he's like 7 foot or whatever, something like huge, Chinese basketball player. So he was actually, I don't want to say genetically engineered, but his parents were
It's like an
put together,
arranged-
were suggested that they go together by the Communist Party so that they could have like an athlete kid, and then they did. And
Isn't
then
that sort
It's
of
kind of
like
crazy that it worked.
yeah,
isn't that like just picking a partner who has the same interests as you? Wow, they were also intellectual. I'm gonna marry them.
My interest is being tall.
Oh my god. Wild.
Yeah, let's talk some psychotechnology. I want to do some psychotechnology stuff. Yeah, how's your practice going, Stuart? What interesting
Meditation practice, right?
things? Your spiritual practice
Spiritual practice. Okay, yep. Open up
or
even.
meditation, whatever it is that you're. What are you up to now? What's your learning edge? What are you trying to crack?
So I've been spending a lot of time looking at the sense of observer itself, like what like the most subtle details I can kind of walk into on like looking or observing, or what is the sense of observing anything. So I'll just tune into that throughout the day as much as I can.
So like
not been-
like observation.
I was just yeah. So like if like let's say you're looking out the window, what is the sense of looking somewhere, or what is the sense that like something is being observed at all? Not what are you observing, but the sense of observing itself.
The
It's
observer.
quite subtle.
Specific observer, not observed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Not necessarily trying to go like who is the observer, what is the observer, like self-inquiry style, but just the sense of observer. Like there's like a very subtle like qualia or sensations that make up this sense that I'm observing something. and is trying to get as much like detail and granularity on those.
Hmm. Interesting.
Is it? Are you?
So there's like subtle contraction around the eyes. That's part of it.
Oh, like visual observing, not like
Well, both, everything, like any kind of observation. But the visual is obviously part of that. Like it all, like there's a whole complex of sensations that go.
Visual's really nice because it's easy to isolate. You know when you're looking at something, and you know when you're not looking at something, kind of.
Yeah, yeah.
But all observers, all observing.
So that's interesting. So
Are you trying to make a specific type of observer, like the loving kindness observation of the world, or equanimous or anything, or you're just trying to observe what is there?
It's observant. Yes, observing the sense of observation itself. It's not. I'm not trying to steer it in any particular direction. Just like bare line investigation of like trying to, like as I'm even observing those things, what does it mean to be observing the sensations of observation itself? And like you can keep going back, but like trying to gain, just like because a lot of these things are like it's almost subconscious, so it takes some effort to try and like get conscious detail on like what's actually taking place and like how attention moving. What are the sensations that make up the sense of attention?
Yeah, I'm more familiar. I think people tend to like concentration or attention like that. It tends to be like very classic. Is that sort of like, I guess that would be like a subset of the phenomenon?
Could you repeat the question?
Well, I mean, like a lot of like traditional meditation, so it's like focus on the breath. So you're like focusing and you're like, what's it like to focus? And then you'll move. If you do like concentration well, like right concentration becomes samadhi. And then that's like this like sort of desirable state that people like to go in. Which I guess is almost so like concentration, like Daniel Ingram says, like the concentration versus mindfulness as a singular phenomenon. And then I guess is that like kind of what you're talking about, like what you're referring to?
It's more like so it's not exactly concentration practice because I'm not trying to focus on any single like area of sensation. It's probably more in the Vipassana, but it's and then narrowing down to the domain of like how does attention work? How does attention what is happening with attention, and like what are all the sensations that make up the sense of attention? Or like I'm trying to go after like more subtle things. So like what makes up the sense of space is another one you could go after.
Like just like that, the quality of space, essentially, like experiencing like space per se.
How do you know if you are noticing space? Like how do you perceive space? Or
so how do you know you're perceiving space, and what qualities make up this sense of space? How is this sense that there is space altogether, how is that built up? How is that constructed? Because it's all constructed. Even it feels like when you first begin, it feels like, okay, space is like the basic like ground where things happen, right? Like everything occurs in space, you'd say, like, right? Like things happen in space around me, or I occur in space, you could say.
Sure.
Like
there are other layers of ground below space, but yeah.
Exactly. There are. And that's what I'm trying to go after. But like when you first start, it feels like space is like the basic thing that you would like take for granted or whatever.
Right.
Or like the primitive almost like. But then at a certain point, then you can go after this, like you're saying, there's stuff below that, or like what creates this sense of space itself to then fill up with different things.
Mm. So this
I
is
mean,
this sounds like late stage Jhanas, like the
Yeah.
last.
That's where I was about to
Yeah.
Well, you know,
It's just giving you
spacious.
room to breathe first.
The jhana of boundless space is the fifth jhana. So you've got the sixth, seventh, and eighth, and also cessation after that. So ninth. But spaciousness is only the fifth. There's more layers beyond that. Have I done
Exactly.
jhana work with you? Have I taken you through those things?
No, and I'm not an expert. I've just basically I've gone in like to the descriptions of each, and then I can kind of like tap into where the descriptions themselves lead me. But I haven't done a ton of like stuff other than that.
So
Like,
this is kind of
I'm
like
an expert. I can't be like, oh, this is definitely like I can't just be like in my experience and then go like, oh, this is the seventh jhana. I'm not that well familiarized with them.
Cool. Well, I'm happy
feel
to.
like a friend.
We can go there. That's like my jam.
Elliot is very good at these.
I don't even think I've covered it in a psychotech, but it's definitely my jam. Right. So basic jhana talk. There's the four material jhanas and the four immaterial jhanas. The four material jhanas are called bliss, joy, contentment, equanimity, or sometimes going by other translations and other names. But we're actually not talking about those at all. Those ones concern physical reality a lot more, like physical experience, whereas the subtle, formless jhanas. So they are boundless space is number 6, boundless consciousness number 7, boundless nothingness or just nothingness is number 7, and neither perception nor non-perception is number 8. And then number 9 is cessation, which is arguably just this other thing. But boundless spaciousness, right? So I've done spaciousness with you before, Stuart, right? That you grab the room. Yes? Yes? Okay, so very quickly, because we've done this before, it's an Alexander technique as well. Shifting your awareness to the space of the entire room. So putting your attention behind you, and then including the walls beside you, and the wall in front of you, and the floor and ceiling. So what we have here, hopefully, is a sense of spaciousness. As I said a moment ago, it's called boundless spaciousness. So we want to move beyond the walls until we have like the entire space. Just lots of, I feel the quality of spaciousness. So that's one layer of experience. Somehow I can feel into, perceive some quality of spaciousness. No epistemic rules about what we mean or like what this means about reality, other than I can feel the space or have a sense of feeling the space at least. Whether or not I am concretely feeling space is another debate, but it certainly seems like I am. And obviously, Stuart, you've already noticed some interesting body stuff when you start feeling the space, right? Your body feels different. Like you get some, I would say, like vantage point perspective on your own body. And so you were doing some neck stretches, or like you said, there's a lot of tension in your shoulders and neck.
Yeah, it's more like whatever like constrictions I have like are no longer being contained, and so like my body will start moving and probably.
Nice.
That's really nice.
Very cool. Right. So Alexander technique, as far as I know, sits here in the space for extended periods of time and like stretches out and relaxes and gets comfortable with the spaciousness. I've done a bunch of that and sat in it, and it's really nice, and you do learn a bunch of stuff. But there are these other levels above, these other jhanas. Which
it feels like I quickly overflow into just like a nothingness sort of state.
Interesting. You skipped one. That's the one after the one I was about to go to. But also like you could just have a bunch of space, then feel very peaceful, and then end up like feeling quite nothing. Like, yeah, okay. The skillful part is the ability to deliberately navigate and deliberately stay in one or another,
right,
under your own control, as opposed to randomly, like you said, you just floated in nothingness. Which
that's one version of skillfulness, I think.
Right. Well, even noticing that you've gone into nothingness is quite skilled. Many people might be like, wow, spaciousness has nothing in it. This is very empty. And I might be like, oh, you've probably gone somewhere else there. But the one in between, the in between stays spaciousness and nothing is called boundless consciousness, or translated in one instance at least as boundless consciousness. So if you go back to noticing the space and the spacious feeling,
Yeah.
and there's a shift from observing the space to noticing that if you can observe the space everywhere, then that means that the observer is in all of the places, and there's a consciousness in all of the places as well. So there's a more like empty spaciousness, and a like, I perceive it as like quite thick with consciousness, like a thick space. And like the space feels very dense with and alive in a like, in the same way that I know that I'm alive and I know that I can look at you and there's aliveness in you, like everything is filled with that quality of conscious aliveness thing.
Right.
A fascinating one to tune into, because also people have all sorts of, if there is someone in the universe that you don't like, right? There's some consciousness out there that contains the non-liking quality, and you are perceiving the boundless consciousness, you will probably get annoyed by or irritated by something in the boundless consciousness, reminding you of the, like, this is your mental map of almost as well of like other people's consciousnesses, right? And so if you have any irritation in your boundless conscious space, you got to work through your stuff so that you're not triggered by other people, so that you can be at peace in boundless consciousness.
Yeah, I think this space first became like abundantly clear to me on mushrooms. It like makes it, it really gives you that sense at times, I find.
I'm having internet difficulties, so I missed that first sentence. Can you repeat that?
I said I first noticed this, it became abundantly clear on mushrooms.
Mushrooms have this magical power of letting you tune into all sorts of things.
Yeah, it really gave it, I think first it gave you that like boundless space, but then it felt like you were everywhere at once, sort of thing. Or consciousness was everywhere at once, and even across space. It wasn't just not across time, not even just space. It felt like the distance between points in time were like closer together.
Yes. So if you
wait, can you say that again? The distance between points in time were closer?
Yeah, it felt like because it's almost like your sense of time makes use of your sense of space. Like it feels like things that were like far back into the past. Like it's almost like a proprioceptive sense. Like I think there's two main things going on when you're like, think about something in the past. It feels distant from you, like behind you almost, I think. And then it also has this sort of like vague cloudiness over it. Like even though it's all contained in this present moment, when you're imagining the past, like it's all now, but it still has this distinct sense that it was in the past. And I think it makes use of the sense of space of like behind you. Like this is something that occurred behind. And
like you're storing them in, because you can't store your memories in time, because then it won't be here now. So you're like kind of storing them in space.
So I want to add to your experiment of think of a memory and like, does it appear behind you and slightly back? Think of something you want to do tomorrow, or think of what you're going to do tomorrow. Where does that appear? And like, what is that? Is it right? It's in front of you. I would say most people would either anticipate it in front of you, or if they learn to write left to right, they may experience like a timeline in front of them of the like the past there and the future there, depending on how they were raised. But generally, I would expect in front and upwards as well. Future tends to be upwards and forwards, and the past tends to be downwards to our roots and also behind us. In most cultures, there's very few cultures that have the future behind you, because someone explained to me that because you can't see the future, like you can see what's in front of you, right? Like, but you can't actually see the future. So the future is in fact more like the backwards space.
Yes, Buddhism has this.
Than the front.
Buddhism
Whereas
has
the past, you've seen it. Yeah. But
Super
you know,
interesting that
I
culture plays a role in how time is represented internally. That's really
Hmm.
interesting.
well, it's sort of like how the people around you taught you to perceive it, I guess. But yes, I agree that like memories appear with the like inner spacious quality a bit and in a like fuzzier, like they're not vivid necessarily. They have something else going on.
Yeah, so on mushrooms, those two effects were reduced. It felt like the amount of distance was closer, and the vague overlay or fuzziness or cloudiness was also reduced. So
As in
everything
like
felt,
the memories were more vivid.
yeah, they felt more like something that's occurring right now.
Hmm. Right. Okay. See, that's interesting. I wanted. There's two things that have popped into my head. One is NLP, and it's advice to like try make it brighter, try make it duller, try drain the color out, try move it further away, and like play with these qualities. Of like particularly the best demonstration I ever saw was someone who was like uh terribly afraid of vomit. Like somehow they had this terribly strong disgust reaction to vomit. And the person went, the practitioner said, when was your first memory of this happening? And they said, when I was 16, when this thing happened. And they were like, okay, we're going to put you in a movie cinema watching the screen of the thing happening. And anytime if you're in the cinema, we're going to move you back up to the booth. So you have some distance from it. And now we're going to like drain the color out of the screen, right? So it's happening, but it's not scary anymore, right? We're gonna like drain the emotion, and then now we're gonna play it over a few times, right? You're getting used to it, you're seeing it, you're getting used to it, and then we're gonna speed it up and like it's fine, it's not scary, you're used to it, and like played around with the qualities of the screen, made sure there was distance, and like within 30 minutes, it was less than that, it was like 10 minutes. The person had no problem with it, went from like a deathly disgust factor to like no problem at all. But that's NLP. Yeah, I was super impressed because usually NLP is it's more like the hypnosis, like it's more like parlor tricks than it is seen as practical. But this person's ailment was completely cured, and it was very genuine. This person had very much struggled with this problem, and then suddenly it was gone. That was the first thing. The second thing that popped into my mind was psychosis. Go ahead.
No, sorry.
I'll come back to psychosis. Well, something that happens when people have psychosis is they can't tell what's real and what's fake, right? They can't tell if the thing they're seeing a monster or they're reliving their PTSD type memory. They can't tell that they're not actually in that, right? There's some part of the mind is confused about which one's real, and that it can genuinely make it hard to navigate reality if you can't perceive the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder how much yeah, I wonder because clearly when you're hallucinating on certain drugs, I think a lot of the times you could tell like this is not reality.
Right. If you drink, you're like, I'm just drunk. That's a thing, right? You're like, or like, I've just had a cup of coffee. Everything's moving very fast. It's classic.
Although a lot of people would swear that entities are real that they encounter.
I think that you're talking about the DMT interdimensional aliens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I haven't done DMT, but from the description, it does sound like things that I've like come across just in meditation.
Oh wow.
Well, the trouble with one of the troubles with DMT is it plays with your sense of what is real, right? Like mushrooms.
Well, you guys are assuming that it's not real.
No. I didn't assume that. But
okay.
I was gonna say that. So it will be hard to tell. Like if it is real and you have a thing playing with your sense of what's real, now what? What do you do? Like, how do you know what's real anymore? You just like your entire epistemics of like, I know what's real should be like thrown out the window. You don't know what's real.
No.
Because you've played with
your
like,
rationality and philosophy. if you have good epistemics, then it doesn't matter if they're interdimensional aliens. Like that should, you could just use the same techniques on them as you would for anything.
Yeah, in theory, if you met the aliens, but they don't seem to interact with our universe unless you're on DMT, they're probably harmless and we can ignore them. As in, like, if they exist but they don't seem to have an effect, it's like
Yeah.
okay,
It's like the invisible dragon in your garage or whatever.
that's right.
Then it's like cool.
Cool. Okay.
And like that's the extent I think of the update. Is, for a lot of it. Yeah, I feel like
I did have one DMT experience, not with an entity, but with the sense of reality. But it was reversed. It was like while I was in DMT, it was like my previous life that I had just lived was clearly not real. Like it was clearly some kind of like dream thing. So it's weird. It does play with this sense of reality, and it does kind of like it. So I could see how people could use like going through some kind of psychosis, like the sense of things being real or not real is like that's your entire barometer for how you judge things. If that's not working,
big problems. Yeah.
So like it's weird, but like yeah, like obviously yeah, like it's gonna mess with you and stuff. But there is like, we do spend a lot of our time in, or at least I do, I spend a lot of time in things that aren't real. So like if you're watching a movie, or if you're imagining something, or if you're planning, or if you're thinking about something, or you're trying to like problem solve, like most of the time that's not real. It's like you're kind of coming up with possibility spaces that may or may not be real, and I guess exploring them. Right.
Yeah, to a higher extent than any sort of like animal humans will do this.
Yeah. So I really do think like we do spend most of our time in non-reality already. So and like often those things are, I don't want to say they're more real than reality, but they're more
Can I slightly modify what you said to we spend most of our time in internal reality?
And can I modify it even further to instead of concrete sensory reality, like the reality informed by the construction that our senses are actively creating.
Present moment reality, maybe? Because a lot of things, there's a lot of realities, clearly.
Yeah, I mean the one that,
let's take this back. Daniel, which one did you mean?
Yeah, I mean the one that's still there when you stop believing in it.
In the orientation of the atoms in the universe, that reality.
I mean, I think there's more level. Like I think all the levels.
Yeah.
But yeah.
The observable atom in the universe reality.
Kant's noumenon, like the thing in and of itself, basically.
Well, like whatever's there if you don't believe in it, right? But it's still there.
Well, the trouble is there's a lot of mental phenomena that are not differentiated from the physical phenomena that may still be there if we don't believe in them.
Yeah, so like maybe like a little less, like because like if you're imagining something, so like,
well, you are still able to imagine things even if someone else doesn't believe you can.
Right.
Difficulty cutting reality. Oh no.
Right. So if you're imagine no,
wait. But reality still exists if we don't know how to cut it.
Yeah, really. Yeah, for sure. You don't always need to cut reality. Reality does things also. You can just go with it. You don't always need to be slicing it open. The like when if you're imagining, like imagine you're imagining something and then you forget that you're imagining it and then you just like live that.
Right, you're living in the little story in your head.
Yeah. So like that, to me, that's what like psychosis seems like. And then you also have this like other thing of reality, of let's say like you not imagining things, of you just sort of interacting with whatever's in front of you or whatever's around. And then both those things become like the background of that, or like become the same, or the orientation of that becomes the same or indistinguishable.
So the way I would break it down is everyone is kind of living in their own fantasy world, but the degree to which people's different fantasies line up, where they can get things done essentially, or can communicate, or they can agree or come to consensus. So you've ever heard the term like consensus reality?
Yeah.
So it's like
that one bugs me a bunch, but yeah.
Is it?
Because like if you're like having to do consensus reality, like you guys aren't in reality. But it's like, okay, like I get you gotta do what you gotta do.
Well, what you're referring to as reality, I would probably consensus reality to some extent. It's
it's a thing that we don't need to consent on. Like it's just gonna be there whether or not we consent or not. They can.
How do you know? How do you know anything about it?
Like testing. What do you mean? This whole rational movement is about that.
So through your senses, right? That's how you'd say.
I mean, the baseline is that there exists. I mean, there exists like, yeah, your senses interact with stuff, and then you extrapolate in ways to like triangulate things so that it's consistent over time.
So I think another important concept here is the difference between direct versus indirect realism. So direct realism would be this idea that there is this reality and we all have direct access to it. Like when we're looking at an apple, like if we're looking at an apple on the table, we're all kind of accessing this objective reality directly. And then there's indirect perception where it's more like your brain or your nervous system or your mind or whatever you want to call it constructs this sense of there being an apple on the table through like your eyes will take in the data, but it's more the actual experience of an apple on the table is all internal. It all exists within your own mind.
Well, all experience exists only within your own self. Like
right.
I'm experiencing an apple, but my experience, like from the internal perspective, my experience of the apple's outside, but in reality, that experience is inside me.
Right. I would say I'm with you on that. Like it's indirect realism, right? Like you would agree that it's not that it's not that you're accessing this objective reality. It's that or it could be informed by objective reality, but your experience of it is all internal in your own subjective experience, right?
Yeah, all experience, I would say at least all dual experience for sure is internal.
Oh, that's interesting.
I think you can like kind of, like it kind of gets like different when you have like a non-dual experience where you're like, let's say like you're not experiencing things, you're just experience. And then it's like the object is kind of like experiencing itself through you, which, agent arena relationship, like the perspective kind of shifts on that stuff. But like if you experience an apple, then you're experiencing an apple. The apple's not, like it has nothing to do with the apple. But also that's still direct experience because you're still looking at it and touching it and tasting it.
I want to say something that will hopefully be interesting and contentious, which is that you can directly perceive reality as a claim.
Yeah.
I hereby claim you can directly perceive reality, which is such an interesting claim, because if you can't, and you can only perceive your visual field perception of the apple, then you go to pick up the apple, but it's only your touch perception. You bite into the apple, it's only your taste perception of the apple. You never really perceive true nature of reality. Then we're forever playing this game of you're like one step away or like or more steps away, depending on how you conceptualize it. But I would go ahead and say you can directly perceive. In fact, if it is the case that we are permanently one step away, then that's just how it is. That's just and you should be able to like if it is in such a way, like you are permanently one step away, everything is like exactly one step away, then you should be able to cancel it out because it's a permanent fixture of reality. Then you can just ignore it. It's like a constant. Any other constant in any equation, you can ignore the constants. So you can directly perceive reality, and if you can't, then you can cancel out the interference of not really perceiving reality and just presume that you can perceive reality.
So in what sense are you directly perceiving reality?
Look, I do believe that I see reality through my senses. Like I have a visual field and I attend to my visual field, and my visual field shows me my desk and computer as I'm currently sitting here. And I believe that I am gaining information about reality by perceiving my visual field. But it's not that I'll never know what reality it's like. It's more like I know exactly what reality is like because I can see it. Well, to the extent of my sensory capacity, right? I can't see the atoms. I can see the light waves because that's what I can perceive through this particular type of sensory mechanism. So I can see the light rays. I believe they are true light rays and they reflect the configuration of Stuart in front of his computer over there. Like, I do believe I am perceiving reality and perceiving reality directly enough. I mean, like, imagine the world that, as we see it. The world as we see it, we're seeing like what we don't see is the light waves bouncing, like flowing through the air at the speed of light, bouncing off things, changing color, and like flowing through the air and coming back and hitting our visual receptor. Like, we don't see that bit. Like, what does reality look like without a visual field in the true perception of reality sense? We scaffold reality so much on what we can see as like a visual reality. Like, just the reality that you can touch is a very different universe than just the reality you can see is a very different universe than just the reality you can hear. They feel like very different places, but you can also align those three and you can live in the world that you touch, see, and hear at the same time with some meditative alignment.
Do you think so? Would you agree that this like visual experience of what you're currently experiencing, let's say there's this visual experience, right?
Right.
In what sense does that, or does, in what sense does objective reality have this quality of like being visual? Do you think there's something to that? Like we because we take our visual experience so much to be reality, as like our method of navigating reality. Is there any sense, do you think,
like a primary map or something?
Yeah, we take it exactly.
It's a real habit. Many people do it. Right. The question is
there any aspect of objective reality that has this sort of like visualness to it? Is like, and how do you know?
Right.
Wait, what?
So
is there anything like direct reality has that's non-visual?
Or it's so the way you construct this space of reality is visually, right? Like you can see the apple, right, and it occupies a place.
Well, I'm more proprioceptive, so like that tends to be more my baseline. So I'm, yeah, but
well, yeah. Let me try and bridge the gap here because I think I can bridge the gap.
Or I feel like the location.
if you put a blindfold on and you're like, okay, what is reality if it's not the visual one, right? And try and like turn off your visualizer that is like, oh yes, this is my chair, and just feel the way around, like the quality of the various objects that I can touch and move and interact with. Reality, it certainly does take on a different phenomenological experience of reality when I'm just using my feelers and not my visual, right? And I happen to know reality quite well by visually, and so as I start touching stuff, I'm like, oh yes, that's my table. Oh yes, that's my cup, because I remember seeing it a moment ago, and so I've matched that up. But actually, if I go by only touch, this is a like kind of cool object because it's a ceramic. It's very smooth on the surface. Like it feels, it's got a lot more to it than its visual appearance.
So Daniel, I have another metaphor maybe that could maybe explain what I'm saying. So like in a video game, you navigate through the interface, right? Like let's say you're playing like an RPG.
Yeah.
You have a screen which displays everything, and you have this interface that you interact. But the reality of the game is that it's code running, right?
Yeah.
So in what sense is the interface the same as the code? Do you know what I mean? Like, so if we take reality to be,
I get what you're saying. Yeah. Like, so in what way do I experience the code of the apple?
yeah,
And I don't.
That's a very cool metaphor when it clicks.
Yeah, that is a very good metaphor. You don't experience the processing of I would say maybe with one exception, like you don't experience the processing of anything that's outside you. And the one exception may be, and this is like tentative or like whatever, I'm not necessarily high, but when you connect with someone else and they're processing, there's like a sense that they're processing, you're processing, like you can have like a really deep connection and, you know, call it like love and intimacy and things like that. And that's kind of like this like parallel processing that you guys are doing together.
I wanna challenge
like technically direct experience. It's just what I think is happening is that there's just so much stimulus happening at you that you kind of transcend. Like it's like when you're playing a game and you forget you're playing a game, and you're like, no, this is real. What's going on right now?
I want to challenge the question of how is the interface like the code, because there are lots of ways in which the interface, the pushing buttons on a keyboard to move your character around is like the code backend of the game. Like they're both computers. They're both electrons traveling through a system. Like they do have similarities. When you say like, how is me observing the apple anything like the true nature of an apple? Well, it is. We're both made out of atoms. My observer machinery is atomic in nature. The apple is atomic in nature. I'm in the same room as the apple, probably, if I'm seeing it. Like there are some similarities here, and we do want to take that into account.
Can I throw another
Sure.
curveball?
Yeah.
There's actually, you can model everything without particles, which then means no atoms and you can model everything as just waves.
I don't know how to do that, to be honest.
I don't know how to. I just know you can.
I've heard of the string. Is that like string theory where everything is strings? Or is this like a
sort of? It's like I'll send you the paper. It's like the paper is titled like "No Evidence for Particles."
For real?
Yeah.
Oh.
All right.
So it does kind of throw into question.
But yeah, I'm interested in the paper, even though I think it might be beyond me. I just want particles to write a paper, no evidence for waves, right back at you.
Oh, is this like
yeah,
a particle?
I'm sure you could do it that way too.
Kind of thing. Because like I know that wasn't there was a guy, if I'm not mistaken, that he won a Nobel Prize for proving that light was a particle, and then his kid won it for proving that light was a wave.
So there are a number of experiments and observations that appear to argue for the existence of particles, including the photoelectric and Compton effects, exposure of only one film grain by a spread out photon wave function, and particle-like trajectories and bubble chambers. It can be shown, however, that all of the particle-like phenomena can be explained by using properties of the wave function state vectors alone. Thus, there is no evidence for particles. Wave-particle duality arises because the wave function alone have both wave-like and particle-like properties. Further, the results of the Bell aspect experiment and other experiments on entangled systems, which seem to imply peculiar properties for particles if they exist, are easily and naturally understood if reality consists of the state vectors alone. The linear equation Hilbert's space structure for the state vectors by itself can explain every mystery in quantum mechanics except the origin of the probability law. So yeah, especially the last bit is definitely over my head, but
This is definitely
so
there's
I said can be explained as waves, but I guess it's more like wave particle duality.
Well, it's saying the wave particle duality arises because the wave functions alone.
I feel like making other ridiculous papers like this, like no evidence for dogs, only ghost like dog phenomena.
But,
There's a lot of footprints here and there's some slurping noises, but are there really dogs here?
I mean, that's kind of like the skeptic, like the hardcore skeptic's position, or even if you want to go with like idealism, is like there's no evidence that there's a physical world. It's all just mental dreaming. It's all just mental phenomena in a way. You're like,
Right, but
But
my
not
statement
true.
of you
That's not
directly perceive reality is to try and argue against that. Like you just can. Like, yeah, I can see it. I can perceive it. Like it just is.
but that would be true in a dream as well.
Yeah, but so what? You can just perceive reality as if you were dreaming. You perceive reality just the same. The reality of the dream.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not about to act crazy just because it doesn't seem like you can prove beyond some shadow of a doubt that there's no physical reality or something.
I also think there's a usefulness to believing that you can know reality. In fact, I had this week a couple of months ago where just everyone I talked to seemed to like anytime they'd have a problem, the problem was that they weren't like there was some like we'll never know and some like I guess we can't really know what the truth is, and so we can't ever investigate and resolve the problem. And there was this obfuscated path to solution where we just couldn't know and therefore we couldn't solve. And it was so frustrating for that 1 week, and then it sort of like settled down again. So like I got frustrated and was like, no, we can know. What do you mean? Like, what do you mean you don't know? Like, how do you feel? Just say something. Just say, I feel like this. And then be like, no, that's not quite right. I do in fact feel like this. Like we can actually know. Stop acting like it's impossible to know. Stop acting like you don't know how that happened or why that happened. Like introspect, perceive, at least try and get close.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I think that's how
you're saying there's like there's harm from like being like too doubtful of like or like lacking enough certainty. Is that what you're saying?
It's not just, it's like an unwillingness to check, to look. And then there's a missing out.
It's isolated demands for non-rigor, for non-rigorous evidence, like for non-evidence. You know what I mean? Like the Slate Star Codex has got like isolated demands for rigor. So if somebody makes a claim and then like all of a sudden somebody else is like, is that true? I need to see evidence, or it's not true. It's like you're kind of doing that. And I feel like with this kind of stuff, a lot of people do, you can't know anything, but they don't live their lives like that. Or they don't live very
What do you
long.
take what are your opinions then on like, have you ever heard of like as a spiritual practice, this practice of like intentionally not knowing things or trying to embrace this, like I can't know things for sure. Like so like in Christian Christian contemplation, there's like the cloud of unknowing. So it's like the idea
Yeah,
is
and
you can't know
Socrates
God fully.
is wise because he knows that he knows nothing.
Right. And
So
I think in Buddhism, there's some of this in Buddhism where it's like you take on great doubt or something like this, or I can't exactly remember how it's worded. But
what's
it's
the
like,
question?
what do you then? What do you like? What's your opinion then of this as a spiritual practice? This idea of like trying to reach maximum uncertainty.
I think that there's quite a spectrum of certainty and uncertainty, and you should explore that with the mind and understand each of them, and because each of them is very important. And we absolutely cannot know the next moment, and yet we absolutely can know that the next moment follows from the previous moment, and so we can know a hell of a lot about it at the same time. And we have this paradox of reality going on all the time. So I think that this is only uncomfortable until you go and investigate. And directly, personally, the mind that has the question about it goes and perceives the reality. Like, what's it like to not know what's going to happen next? And what's it like to know lots about what's going to happen next? And then gets the hang of that. And then there's really no question left once you've gone and once that mind has gone and perceived for itself, there's no question.
I'm trying to think how do you have any sense in what the like embracing maximum uncertainty, how it works,
like how to do it? Like, are
well,
you asking what meditation should I do to understand uncertainty?
Yes, there's that. Yeah, let's start there.
Okay. So how did I do it? There was a method that I did. I used to be like, so you close your eyes and you open your eyes, and you should expect the same world to be there, right? Because you just close your eyes, right? The same world is there. That sense of like, oh yeah, the same world is there, even though I've only just closed my eyes, you can get that to dissolve until you are like, and you can be like, how sure am I that the world is actually there? And so when you close your eyes, it's actually more like blank rather than like the world is still there, the world is still there, the world is still there. It's more like, I don't know, maybe I'll open my eyes and my desk will be gone. Like, probably not, given I have my other sensory perceptions, and it's quite unlikely that those things happen, but potential. And I don't want to be experiencing surprise infinitely all the time. That would be kind of annoying. But I do want to, like, if my eyes are closed, I want to be like, oh, my eyes are closed, I don't know what's out there, but I want to know the truth, right? The truth is that I don't know. And then I want to open my visual field and be like, oh, it is still here. Okay. But like, I want to be calibrated to the shape of my visual field, as opposed to like, reality is still there, close my eyes, reality is still there. You know, what if someone throws a tennis ball at my face when my eyes are closed? Like, there's no tennis ball coming at my face, you know, whack. Like, things can happen when my like object permanence is a little bit objects aren't permanent. You close your eyes, they might not be there because you can't see them. They probably are, by all means.
I don't get this.
I was gonna say, so do you have any sense in what this is doing for you, or like how it works? Like, what is, like, how does it progress you?
Like a quality of freedom,
Right.
because well, there's a few things. One is your ability to conjure up possibility is your ability to imagine things different. And if everything is really like just how it is, then you don't have freedom to make the better world that you might want. And so brains will do all sorts of things to ensure that they don't suffer by pretending they can't change the world, right? If I can't change the world, if I can't make the world better, then I don't even have to try. But as soon as you start breaking this, like actually the world could be completely different. Like I close my eyes, it's completely not there visually, right? What would I like to see in my world? I would like to see a mountain of gold. Well, if I would, then I better damn well start working towards having my mountain of gold on my desk in front of me. But it's got to take work, and so I better like be careful what I wish for.
See, I think how it works is that you're constantly creating these predictions of like what the next moment is going to be like, and those predictions in and of itself inform what you actually perceive in the next moment. And so you almost limit your perception by this like predictive thing. And so by letting go of this predictive like compulsion, you actually gain better access to this reality that you speak of. If you are accessing reality, it's like the degree to which you let go of your expectations of what that reality is like means that you might get a more actually objective sense of what reality actually is in that moment.
I've decided I gave a bad example and I have a better one. So
Okay.
certainty and uncertainty, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff that you know, right? I can look at my desk. I keep saying that because I'm sitting at a desk, right? I can look at my desk. This is what's here. But I'm also always uncertain about stuff. I don't know what's behind me. I'm pretty sure that it's just my background. If I look over there, it's probably just my background. But there is like, in this moment, there's a bunch that I know and there's a bunch that I don't know. Sometimes what happens is that we have a preference for one or the other. Like the unknown is the exciting, fun one, or the known is the safe and secure one. So what I would get you to do is, if you put your attention towards the unknown in this moment, there's stuff that you don't know, there's stuff outside the room that you're currently in, right? There's a lot of the quality of unknown that should be tagged onto all sorts of things that you know, right? It might be out there, but there's a lot of unknown. So the question is, how do you feel about that unknown? As you start to notice that, I don't know this stuff, I don't know that stuff, how do you feel about it?
Somewhat indifferent, I guess.
Yeah, that's fine. So when I first hit the perceptual realization of the difference between the known and the unknown, I also had stored a whole bunch of discomfort, like in the sense of like afraid of the dark, sort of discomfort in the unknown.
Right. Yeah.
And so I hit this like, bam, like this is everything you're afraid of because you don't know what's there. And so I had to do a bunch of processing, and then I came to peace with it. And now the unknown is like, oh yeah, sometimes it's interesting, sometimes it's scary, sometimes like the unknown can hold all of these qualities that have lots of interestingness, can be good and bad. But the first time I hit it, it was like, oh no, all the bad stuff is here. As soon as I could like directly perceive the unknown, I was like, oh, scary.
Yeah, it's especially if like a lot of the times unknowns are contained within like something that you do know. Like, oh, I know this unknown pertains to me, but I don't know exactly how it pertains to me, and that's when it's probably the most scary. Is like, oh, something could happen to me, but I don't know exactly what's going to happen to me or whatever.
Yeah, and then it seems like if you've done the adult thing long enough, you eventually like, unknowns are fine. Like, you know, sometimes you don't know stuff. That's okay. Like you said, you have an indifference. But
yeah, like it's doesn't help to like expend all this like nervous energy to freak out about something that you don't even know enough about to do anything about.
And just to check, since we're nearby on the topic, how do you feel about all the stuff that you know? If you're indifferent to the unknown, do you feel good about the known or anything in particular?
At times there's this definite clinging to like what I think I know, because it gets the sense of like safety or comfort that
Right.
Well, I know how things work, and therefore I'm okay or whatever.
Right. I know how to do my job, and therefore I like my job, and therefore these are good things. Yeah, we've got a whole bunch of like weird emotional stuff hanging around, all sorts of phenomena in our mental capacity. But yeah, it's just interesting to notice. Like, I definitely on my like developmental journey, I I was a bit chaotic, and I was like, I know lots of stuff. I like the known stuff. And then I was like, that's wrong. That stuff is wrong. This stuff is right. And then I was like, actually, first of all, I don't know about the wrong stuff because I've never actually been there. I don't know enough to know that that's wrong. So I'm gonna reel that back. What I do know is like I like science. And so I did a whole bunch of reading and read like biology, chemistry, like understood a bunch of psychology, like, oh, and then I had this island and I was like, oh, I now know this. And it's not that that's wrong, it's that that is unknown. Anything outside is uncertain right now. And so then I grew my like island of knowledge, and until I was like, I like all my known stuff. And then I was getting like bored because I knew all this stuff. And I was like, where do I go from here? And that's where I stepped into the unknown, and I was like, whoa, there's everything else that we don't yet know. That, and you know, good science is done in the territories of what we don't know. You know, we've accidentally
Yeah.
been taught that good science is done in like chemistry, biology, like in a square, but actually good science was done when they didn't know what the chemical elements were and they were trying to work it out. And so doing science in that new unknown territory today is going to be looking very different to the science that was an unknown territory 100 years ago. Super exciting.
Yeah, I think a lot of my internal core motivations behind learning about rationality and things of that nature was this sense that of like safety it gave me, or
Yeah, I had very similar. And then I knew stuff, and like I could trust myself because I would, you know, I will be reliable to myself, but everyone else is irrational.
yeah. Yeah, and then at a certain point, I guess you do realize you've kind of built up this cage of just clinging to what you know, and you do have to go into that unknown territory, which can be scary at first.
Yeah, I agree. That's sort of how I describe it as well. Daniel, did we lose you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the whole thing is this whole conversation has been hard for me to follow. And like I don't think I totally relate to all this stuff.
The known and unknown one, or
when you moved into the unknown, I was like, okay, I think I see, because like I've heard this story before from you. So like the context kind of filled in, and I'm like, oh well, you guys are kind of like doing this thing from like this, like a different perspective. Like that's when it kind of like overlapped with my map, and then kind of like able to extrapolate and stuff.
well, how
But
much
it feels like it's like a yeah.
for you, Daniel? How much do you hang out in certainty or uncertainty, or known and unknown?
Like whatever.
It's just so like there's just a quality of reality that has some more certainty around it or some less certainty around it, depending on.
Yeah, like I prefer not knowing. Like I like not knowing and chaos, and but I used to really like knowing, and I also like knowing. I don't know, knowing and unknowing are both fun. Like it's like I like being on the edge of, and like not knowing, because then everything is exciting. But like I feel good about myself when I know what's going on.
Yeah.
And so like like the unknown qualities just do it.
Are you more laid back in that you don't have this like neurotic need to like map everything out? Or
Yeah, I used to have that. I used to have to map everything out. Like for me, like the rationality stuff was like, oh, I need to know what's going on. How am I going to do things otherwise? And then like through meditation and like connecting with people, circling and stuff, I realized nobody knows what they're doing and they all somehow survive. So that's a lot of evidence that I don't actually need to know what's going
I
on.
do want to say the phrase, you can die, actually.
Yeah.
But for the most part, people are doing kind of all right.
I get very careful when I get in situations
In
where
real
I might,
danger, yeah.
yeah, like where people might die, like slow down and move. Like I move much slower and like carefully and deliberately. And I take on less. Like I just don't, I stop caring about a lot of things. When, when me or someone in my care is in danger of dying, which, you know, as a parent actually happens more than not, more than never. Yeah, like just a lot of things, just like I don't care about any of this stuff now. Like I only care about like keeping everyone alive and safe and that kind of stuff. And yeah, the dishes might not get done for a couple days and the garbage is overflowing, but we're gonna keep everyone alive because that's the most important.
Hmm.
But it's not like panicky even. It's just
So one thing I'm wondering about is it, so Stuart kind of described, or Daniel described, like you want to know some things and then not know other things because it's comfortable. So I want to know in ways that make me comfortable, and then I want to not know in ways that make me interested. And so
I want to know everything,
right,
but I want to spend my life in the unknown.
right,
So
because that's more interesting to like add to your knowledge.
yeah, like I want to learn everything and I want to know everything, but I want to live my life in the unknown.
But
and it's a paradox, but
so if you say you want to live your life in the unknown, are you constantly trying to eat newer foods, different foods that taste like things you haven't tried?
Almost always, whenever there's a new thing, it's almost always that's the default option.
Right.
It's actually got to the point where the familiar stuff started to become new again. Like familiarity was like an alien to me. Like that feeling of things being was like a weird, like it became an aversion actually. And
what's this again?
Yeah, I had to, and I'm like, oh no, this is a new feeling. I can
the familiarity feeling is a new feeling. Wow.
Yeah. And that was, there's a lot of trauma in that. Like I found a lot of like trauma points. I'm like, oh, maybe I don't have to live my life just new and never do anything.
Right. And live my life running away from
anything I've ever touched.
Yeah. Right. So what I was gonna ask is it like a skillful balance between like I want the known things, like I want some of my life to be stable, so like I want that, and then I want some of my life to be novel and interesting. And is it organizing it into different places, or is it having it like I just need 10% of my life to be stable and 90% can be unstable, or like what is the
familiar and like stable versus like unstable, familiar versus novel, let's say.
Yeah.
And then unknown versus unknown, like these are all separate qualities.
Mm-hmm. Right. So is it that there's a right way to have them, or is it that they're all fluid and you gotta sort of keep moving all of the levers and dials to keep the like?
No, this is it's, you don't need to control this.
Right. Even you're right. I've presented like a control scenario.
Yeah, no, this is just things have these qualities. Right? It's like, do you need food to be salty or sweet or bitter or sour? Like I need food to taste like food and I need to be good for me and I need it to taste good. And yeah, like it does happen. If I'm not going to eat a salty food for like a week, then I'm going to want to eat something salty. And if I'm not going to eat something sweet for a week, then I'm going to start craving that. So like that kind of stuff does happen. But yeah, you want a balanced diet of these qualities. And yeah, like for me, it's less, I guess maybe I used to control it maybe more, but it seems like the way my life is, like things come more or less the same. And then sometimes I'm like, no, I need to I need to I'll watch something that I've seen before. And I'm like, yes, this gives me a sense of comfort.
Mm.
That familiarity.
Like you rewatch an old TV show, or
Yeah, like a YouTube video. Like sometimes YouTube video will pop up. Like I've already seen that like 20 times, but I want to watch it again because it feels good.
Mm.
And
It's pretty common with people with anxiety. They'll rewatch shows because there's less of that unknown. They already feel like they have so much unknown in their life, too much unknown.
yeah, there's like a compulsive way to do that, which is really unhealthy. Where like,
well, it's definitely a coping mechanism, the way they're using it.
Yeah, it becomes a coping mechanism. And I find with anxiety, like the best thing to do is to kind of like deal with all the things that are coming up as they come up. And like that's the only way to kind of stay on top of things, is like as things arise, you make decisions and deal with it. And sometimes the decision is like leave it till later. But
yeah, it's embracing this sense of not needing to map everything out so much. It's the compulsive need to map out that leads to the anxiety, I think.
Yeah. And sometimes I still map stuff out. Like I still like I'll watch videos or I'll like think about things and plan stuff out and like, hey, this is what I'm doing for the next hour or two because this is what's coming up. What's coming up is that I want to sit and plan. But yeah, I used to feel like I had to do that all day, every day. I had to like pack in as much like knowledge or stability or like power, or else like bad things would happen later.
Right.
And
I think there's a difference between like I'm going to be definitely doing this task, and it might be a good idea to kind of figure out how I'm going to go about doing that task, like that kind of mapping.
Yeah, like
versus
something task
like
like a task will come up and be like, I don't know how to do this. I should probably like get some information, like map out some of the stuff, get a head start. But yeah, like for me, that like a lot of that like need, it was like this like pressure on myself, and then I had like the anxiety and depression. And it's interesting, like there's a real lesson there in like being depressed and not doing anything is like your body's way of telling you don't need to do anything. Right? Like here's what happens when you do nothing. And like you still get depressed and stuff, and like you gotta deal with that in a healthy way. But there is this level on which you don't have to put pressure on yourself, and you're not gonna know everything anyway. Like you're gonna die in ignorance, no matter no matter how you live your life. And no matter how you live your life, you're gonna make it to the end. And you just try to keep that end as far away as possible, I guess. And take care of those you love. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. What's the meaning to life? I don't know.
Daniel.
Why are you trying so hard? Yeah. I don't know. There's like a certain serenity and like comfort that comes with it. And like, that's the thing I wish I could convey. But I don't really know how.
Yeah, and also it's there's a certain confidence in knowing you can kind of figure things out as you go along. I think that's part of it too.
Yeah, that was actually a big one. Where like I moved from like the rationalists that need to know everything to the rationalist that could figure out anything. And like I don't know if that's
you go through enough struggles and you're like, oh, like I couldn't have even foreseen the exact problems that came up, but I was okay anyways. I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, like whatever happens, I'll figure it out. Like I'm really good at figuring stuff out. Like this is what I do. So now I don't need to know anything because I'll just figure it out. And yeah, you want to save the bandwidth so that you can figure out what it is that you have to figure out.
Is there another stepping stone in that trajectory from need to know everything, able to figure everything out? Is there another like step?
Oh yeah, you don't have to you figure out what you don't have to figure out. And then you don't have to think anymore. You stop to think sometimes. Like you can't, I haven't been able to get through life without thinking at all. I think that's probably insane, but like you don't like you need to give your mind a break, number one, and number two, if you're not able to shut it off, then you're ruminating, like you're not actually thinking. And so like a lot of the stuff you don't like, there's a lot of things that happen and I'm just like, I don't know what happened and it doesn't matter. And like other people are freaking out. I'm like, it doesn't matter. They're like, but what is it? I'm like, well, then we'll just deal with it then. But if you're gonna like stress out up until then, like you're not gonna have any bandwidth to deal with it then. And so if I'm not stressing and I'm not thinking and I haven't wasted any resources, then when I get there, I'm gonna have all the resources available and I'll just be able to do it efficiently. And then my life becomes very, very relaxed and effective. The only thing is that I start to hate myself because I'm like one of those people that kind of just like, it feels like I'm starting to breeze through life.
Go with the flow too much.
Yeah. And like, I hate those people. Like those people are so like, fuck you, like suffer like all the rest of us.
So stop being so unneurotic.
Yeah. Like that's not fair. You can't do that. Like everyone has to suffer, and if you're not suffering, but that's not true, and that's not like that's not healthy.
That's almost part of the whole trap, is we believe that that's true. Like the world is not perfect, therefore everyone has to be to some extent worried about something.
Yeah.
And actively.
Yeah, like
if you're too carefree, it's because you're not in touch with reality. I think that's
yeah. And there are people that like pissed me off so much, like in the like the when I came to the rationalist community, like there were already meta rationalists in the space, and like they're just like doing these things like willy-nilly or whatever. It's like, you're such an asshole, like you're just leaving, like you're not doing any of this stuff.
Yeah, I think that's more common in spiritual circles. This like, well, so there's some idea, and it's obviously not agreed upon, but there's some people that I've heard who claim that the end goal is that you really don't engage in this like thought process at all. Like Gary Weber, I think is one guy. Happiness beyond thought.
Yeah, thinking is a thing. Like you can do it or you cannot do it. You can still like you should do it sometimes. Like we do have frontal lobes for a reason, but yeah, the 24/7 like constant analytics it's not effective.
Yeah, I would say like over the past 10 years I've gone from less and less compulsion to think about everything, and I do feel freer, less stressed, probably happier.
I figured it out. Sorry, I figured it out exactly what it is. It's like coincidentally things work out, and then you like take credit for it as if you knew that that's what was going to happen. Except the thing is, the reason why I won't let go of this is because, like, as a rationalist, if I make the prediction that things will coincidentally work out, then that's a real prediction. And then when it works out, you should update towards me. I shouldn't be updating towards you.
Can you explain that last bit?
If I make a prediction and when that prediction is correct, then that gives me clout, right? Like my prediction market, my prediction value market, my prediction as a person, like my clout as a rationalist, my real life metaculus score would go up. So if you have like two people, one of them stressing like, oh, things are going to go badly, and one of them's like, no, things are going to be fine, and then things go fine. The guy who said things go fine, like you should be more like him because he was right.
So I think the argument, the one who predicts things go wrong,
I have a shit bias.
Yeah, so the person who thinks things are going to go wrong is like, okay, you're right now, just like if you predict no rain more often than not, you're going to be correct. You say, oh, it never rains. That person is more often correct than the person who thinks it always rains. But the person who
so take the never rain stance.
No, it depends on,
or take a nuanced stance if you want. Like
some places rain a lot more than, and so if you're in a place that rains like every 3 days, just say it's gonna rain. You'll probably be right.
Well, so I think in most places in the world it rains less than it doesn't rain as often as it does rain. Like there are more no rain days than there are rain days, or at least hours. Like if you go outside, the odds of it raining are not super high in most places. In LA, you live in Australia.
Yeah, so there's some places like Israel has like a raining season and not raining season. So like during their non-raining season, it rains less than once a year. So
the reason I brought that example up is like the person who prepares for the rain though. So when shit does go bad, basically the person, that's the reason that they have that negativity bias, is because they would argue, oh, I'm better prepared for when things do go wrong.
Yeah, like you're saying, give it a weighted score instead of just like an overall, right? Because if I'm saying like, oh, like let's say my shoelaces untied, I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna trip on it, right? Like the odds are against I'm gonna trip on it, but the one time that I do, bad things can happen. So then, even if I'm right 9 times out of 10, that 10th time is higher weighted than the other 9 times.
Right.
Catastrophic.
You're right. So yeah, like 100% agree with you. Like the predictions need to be weighted. They need to be like not just binary, but they need to be odds given, and they need to be weighted as well. But the thing is, when they say like things go bad, like they don't know what the specific thing is, so they wind up just like creating all these scenarios or preparing all this stuff. And if they're the ones that cause the bad thing, then that prediction doesn't count, first off. Like you can't do that. You can't say things are going to go badly, and then when things are going fine, you make it go badly. Like, yeah, you're right, but I'm not going to hang out with you anymore if you do that.
Which is part of the problem with this, like clinging to the known, is like in some sense you increase the odds of that thing happening just by, or you can at least, like, especially let's say you're like, oh, if I approach this, like let's say you're trying to get a date, you're like, oh, if I approach this woman, she's gonna reject me, and you hold that belief, it's actually more likely that she will actually reject you.
Yeah, and you come out like all timid and like ready to run away. She'll be like, I don't know what's up with this guy, but I don't want to be with him.
There's this story, the guy's driving down a country road and his car breaks down, and he sees over in the distance, he needs a jack to change the tire, and he sees over in the distance there's a farmhouse. So he's like, well, he starts walking, and it's like, turns out the distance is much further away than he thinks, and it's a bit of a longer walk, and so he keeps walking, getting closer, but and he's like, it's getting dark, and he's like, well, the farmer, he's probably not going to be happy to see me. He's probably like, I'm going to disrupt his evening, and he'll probably be annoyed, and long walk, keep this like ruminating going until eventually he gets to the door, and he knocks on the door, and the farmer says, can I help you? And he says, you can keep your damn jack, and storms off.
Yeah.
Right, that's that ruminating that'll like give you the wrong outcome in the world.
Yeah, right. I like that joke. Like I have seen people do that kind of stuff. Not that bad, but
cool. Yeah, I think maybe that's a good place to wrap up. Like end of the joke. But give a little bit more depth to the joke. If you perceive the world in a more positive light, you will probably end up living in a more positive world.
Yeah, and I want to say if you're gonna, like, if you think something's bad's gonna happen, you don't know what it is, relax, because you need to have that situational awareness so you can see it coming as soon as you can.
Right. Well, if you think it's definitely going to happen, then stop being so tense about it. If it's not going to happen, then, or like if it's, you got some choice about it, then you should be proactive. But if you got no choice, then sit back and enjoy the roller coaster you're already on.
yeah, if something's gonna happen, then deal with it. And if you're not dealing with it, but you're acting all stressed, this is avoidance. This isn't whatever you think it is.
All right.
And like that happens. Like people avoid and things get too hard. But not Psychotechnologies live.
Psychotechnologies live.